Yeah. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? Kyle back with the Fantasy Headliners, and it's the beginning of a new week, which means it's time to talk some waiver wire targets for week 5 of the NFL season. Hopefully week 4 went great for all of you. And keep in mind, this video is always recorded at halftime of Sunday Night Football. So we still have another half of Sunday Night Football and all of Monday night to go. So if anything happened after that time, it may not be included in this video. But we got to talk about quite a few guys in this video that maybe we should be spending some fab money on or using a waiver wire priority on. And then of course we've got a streaming segment. But first, before all of that, it's time to jump in to one of the new segments for this year that I absolutely love right now. They said, what? Taking a look at some of the comments that came across the videos last week. The first one from Jose Gonzalez. You had that fly flying around because you guys are the Thanks for all you do. Saturday night during the live show, a little fly made his way into the studio and kept bugging me. So I'm assuming that's what Jose is talking about. Sesk, Galaxy Creations, Target Talk, Tog, Hog, LMAO. If you caught the wide receiver video this week, you would have seen me mess up the word Target Hog, and I kept messing it up, but that's all right. Had a little bit of fun at my expense. Why, if you can't laugh at yourself, what can you laugh at these days? DH says, what the beep? Why? Because that's what one of my videos was called this week, taking a look at some of the studs that just have not performed so far this season. And I'll tell you what, one guy highlighted in that video that I was like, it's coming soon. Jonathan Taylor, he had a huge week 4. Glad to see that. And then Porter, you got me on Pristine Auction, bought a Willis McGahee signed jersey for a buddy, then 2 Xavier Howard jerseys. It's too addicting, LOL. Porter, I'm gonna need you to put down the computer for a little bit, my man. Actually, no, do what you do. Hey, YOLO, if you wanna buy something from Pristine Auction, just do it. Just do it. And if you create an account, use code word headliners when you do. Ladies and gentlemen, now that we've had a chance to take a look at some of the awesome comments from our videos this week, it is time to dive into some players that we should be taking a look at on the waiver wire this week. And we are going to kick it off with our running backs. But don't forget, our video here is always brought to you by our friends over at Fantrax, one of the most customizable fantasy platforms that you can find today. If you create a free account over on Fantrax, just make sure you use the code word headliners so they know who sent you over there when creating your league. So running backs, first up on the waiver wire. We're going to start off with Damian Williams out of Chicago, 10% owned. Right now, we have no idea how long David Montgomery is going to be out for. As of the recording of this video, what I had heard was Chicago doesn't feel like it's going to be overly serious, maybe more of just a hyperextension, but we don't know yet. We don't know. And Damian Williams is kind of the clear number 2 in that offense right now. He did have 55 yards on 8 touches with a touchdown against Detroit. Las Vegas might be a little bit more of a difficult matchup for him, but I'm going to take advantage of the RB1 on that offense because they came out with a better game plan this week than what they had last week. And part of that was a more balanced approach. Samaje Perine. It's Samaje. Anyway, Perine from Cincinnati at 1.5% owned. Right now, I don't know Joe Mixon's status. A good game on Thursday Night Football this past week, but at the very end of the game, Mixon had to come off the field and you could see him limping around. I have not heard anything else about his status as of right now. So for Perine, we got to grab him because he is going to be the starter. If for some reason Mixon cannot go this week against Green Bay, you Mixon owners should probably be taking a hack at him first thing. J.D. McKissick for Washington, just under 50% owned. I mean, here's the thing. He doesn't do anything and then he does something, and he doesn't do anything and then he does something. There's never ever going to be any rhyme or reason for JD McKissic. Are you going to be starting him on a weekly basis? If you are, you're in a very deep league, or you're in a whole lot of trouble right now. He did have 5 catches on 5 targets for 44 yards and a touchdown. He also had 7 attempts on the ground. Antonio Gibson is still the guy there. JD McKissic is messing with his upside a little bit. I'm starting Antonio Gibson, but I'm not necessarily starting JD McKissic at any point in time, again, unless you're in trouble. For Miami, Malcolm Brown, for some reason or another, they've moved away from Myles Gaskin, and I don't know why. Because when he was getting touches to start the season, he was doing a good job in the passing game. He was doing, even with the limited touches that he was getting on the ground, he was still pretty dynamic. He was doing some good things on the ground. Was he exploding? No, not by any means. But then all of a sudden, it's just like he doesn't exist anymore. And I honestly don't know why. I went back and looked at some tape, and I don't see anything. I don't see anything that would lead me to believe that Miami would be like, oh, we can't trust Myles Gaskin. I don't get it. But it 100% feels like they're moving to Malcolm Brown. So at 12% owned, if you're a Myles Gaskin owner, I would grab Michael Brown. And we'll talk about Myles Gaskin again in a minute. Kenneth Gainwell for Philadelphia at 24% owned. It's interesting how much work he got this week. And the work that he got was pretty impressive. He was more explosive on the ground. He did well through the air in the receiving game. And he just outperformed Miles Sanders. And what I've seen a lot of times in these situations is where, Miles Sanders, it's just because they're utilizing him in one way and they're very bland with his play calls. Like they're putting him in situations where it's like, oh, we know a run is coming, where you get Kenneth Gainwell on the field and it's like, we don't know what they're doing. Miles Sanders is not getting that much work in the passing game. So when they see him out there, it's like, oh, it's going to be a run or a pass. Like they're not doing anything with Miles Sanders. We just got to key on the run with him. So Kenneth Gainwell, and part of it might be too, is they want to see what they've got in this guy. Miles Sanders is not from the current regime. They might not be interested in him as their lead running back. They might not feel he is a lead running back. Kenneth Gainwell is getting way too many touches right now for Miles Sanders owners. In Baltimore, Latavius Murray and Le'Veon Bell going up against Indianapolis. We tried to steer you away from Tyson Williams, and I'll talk about that more in a minute as well. But Latavius Murray and Le'Veon Bell will be the guys moving forward. Now, did they do much of anything this past week? No, not really. Murray scored a touchdown, didn't have a whole lot of yards, but he's working his way in, right? He didn't come in until the last minute. So we're heading into week 5. Tyson Williams was a healthy scratch this week. I think that tells you all where they stand in this backfield right now. Alex Collins for Seattle. Now, this is not a guy that I'm running out to add right away, unless maybe I'm a Chris Carson owner and something comes up this week. But he did have 10 total carries on the ground for 44 yards and a touchdown, and he caught both of his targets in the air this week. Carson didn't look great this game. No injury that I know of. I know 2 weeks ago he kind of left with some cramps. Had like a cramp that he kind of came out with and was dealing with that throughout the week or something. But Alex Collins just got more touches this week. So for you Chris Carson owners, have Alex Collins on your radar. Brandon Bolden for New England at 1.4% owned. Going up against Houston this week, you could see it on Sunday Night Football. Again, I only watched the first half. This is just based on the first half because I record this show at halftime. Brandon Bolden is taking over the James White role. Keep an eye on that over the next couple of weeks. Peyton Barber for Las Vegas, again, recorded before Monday Night Football. I don't know the status of Josh Jacobs. I know he was going to be a game time decision, but going into next week, if some reasons Jacobs still doesn't play, you Jacobs owners may just want to hold on to Peyton Barber and stash him just in case. So that's all for our running backs this week. Let's move on over to wide receivers. Darnell Mooney. Heard a few of you chirping me in the comments last week about why do you expect Darnell Mooney to do anything? I had him as a start. I expected a big play going against Detroit, and we got a couple of big plays. Caught 5 of his 7 targets for 125 yards. And I mentioned it during the live show that Darnell Mooney has actually played more snaps this year than Allen Robinson. If they are going to let Justin Fields rip a little bit more now, Darnell Mooney is going to start seeing some more looks down the field, and he can become what we thought he was going to be this preseason. Khalif Raymond for Detroit at 0.6% owned going up against Minnesota. He's got 16 targets over the last 2 weeks, and he did have a slow start against Chicago, but he did rebound and come on strong in the second half with a couple of touchdowns. I think he is going to slowly start becoming the safe weekly bet for Jared Goff. Cephas is, he's a little bit up and down. He bounced back and had a good week this week. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 8 targets this past week as well, but I think Khalif Raymond is slowly kind of becoming that go-to guy for Jared Goff, and he might not have as big as numbers, maybe as like a Quintez Cephas will on a weekly basis, but I think they're going to be looking his way in the red zone more often, and I think we'll see these targets keep up. Rashard Higgins for Cleveland at 0.4% owned. He is the number 2 target right now without Jarvis Landry there. I thought maybe it was going to be Donovan Peoples-Jones, but didn't see anything from him this past week, unfortunately. So Rashard Higgins kind of taken over as that number 2 right now. 7 targets on Sunday. Kadarius Toney coming out of nowhere, playing the Sterling Shepard role this past week. Only 3.2% owned right now. And for me, he's got some wide receiver 3 value in PPR league. 78 yards on 6 receptions, 9 targets last week. So he's kind of filling that Sterling Shepard role. So if Shepard is out again next week, I think Toney's a guy in deeper leagues or wide receiver 3 leagues where you have to start 3 that you could potentially put in your lineup. Jamison Crowder, is he back? I love Jamison Crowder. Big Jamison Crowder fan here. 7 receptions on 9 targets, 61 yards, and 1 touchdown is the number 2 on Sunday for the New York Jets. He could end up being a huge help for Zach Wilson, who's having some confidence issues right now. Zach Wilson did bounce back and look a little bit better this past week. Again, kind of a rough start to that game. Came on strong at the end. They get Atlanta this week. If Jamison Crowder continues to play and Elijah Moore misses any more time, then Jamison Crowder, I think, is going to be a really solid PPR play. Josh Reynolds for Tennessee. He was the top targeted wide receiver for Tennessee last week, and no idea how long A.J. Brown and Julio are going to be out. So for me, Josh Reynolds, he does a little bit more of everything. He's a guy that can stretch the field, but can win some of those intermediate routes as well. Like Chester Rogers, Jeremy McNichols out of the backfield got a lot of targets this week, but Josh Reynolds is kind of the guy where he could win all over the field. So he's kind of my pick right now. AJ Green for Arizona, only 27% owned. He has 6 targets in all 4 games this season. In each of all 4 games this season, he has touchdowns in 2 of 4 games, and he has 179 yards over the last 2 games. He's kind of establishing himself as the number 2 behind DeAndre Hopkins. My DeAndre Hopkins sit call this past week was not the most popular one that I heard, but I ended up getting it right, and A.J. Green has kind of helped fill that void the last couple of weeks while Hopkins has kind of been dealing with that injury, and he's had to go up against Jalen Ramsey, so A.J. Green, he's kind of settling in as that number 2 right now. Van Jefferson Van Jefferson from the Rams at 5.4% owned. He's got 12 targets over the last 2 games, and he's the big playmaker in this offense, and he's not going to have a whole lot of volume. He is going to be a guy that if you start him, he's going to probably burn you more weeks than not. But he is a guy in the right matchup is going to have pretty decent games. Matthew Stafford is wanting to stretch the field, and they're not doing it often, but they're doing it enough that Van Jefferson has some fantasy relevance right now. Sammy Watkins and Rashad Bateman, both from Baltimore, going up against Indianapolis this week. I was going to put Sammy Watkins in here, and then I knew a lot of you would be asking, well, what about Bateman? With him coming back, what are we doing there? Things of that nature. So I decided to include Rashad Bateman here, but here's the thing. Marquise Brown is playing very well. A bounce back week this past week after watching him just be absolutely awful in Detroit. But Sammy Watkins has 7 targets at least in every game this year. He had 8 targets in week 1. He's had 7 targets each of the last 3 weeks. He is the wide receiver 2 right now. And then you still have Mark Andrews there. So Rashad Bateman, I'm not picking him up right now because I don't think that this is a guy that's going to come in and be fantasy relevant right away unless Sammy Sammy Watkins were to get hurt, Marquise Brown goes down, something like that, then maybe he steps up. But right now, it's going to be way too rough for him. And then Randall Cobb, 13% owned, going up against Cincinnati. He's the wide receiver 2 right now with no MVS, and he played like it this past week, catching 5 of his 6 targets for 69 yards, scored twice. It took a few weeks for him and Aaron Rodgers to get going again, but he finally did. But he's playing like the wide receiver 2 right now. And if MVS is going to miss a few weeks, Rondell Cobb could end up having a few weeks. So Randall Cobb, keep an eye on him. For the tight end position, CJ, who's your mama? If you were playing him last week, let me know. BS. I call it right now. There is no way in the world that many people had CJ Uzomah in their lineup last week. I don't call it. But CJ, who's your mama? 95 yards on 5 receptions, 6 targets, 2 touchdowns last week. If T. Higgins doesn't get back, could it happen again? Be careful with CJ, who's your mama. He's done this before where he's had some good games and people have been like, oh, here we go. It's happened before and he hasn't done it, okay? So just be careful with it. He's not someone I'm running out to get right now. But Dan Arnold for Jacksonville actually is, right? I mean, for the longest time, I've always told you Dan Arnold isn't a thing. In Jacksonville, with DJ Chark out, Dan Arnold could very well become a thing very, very soon. Dan Arnold, don't make me regret this. Don't you do it, Dan. I swear to God, okay? I promise you. I'll find you. I'm going to give you a big old hug because you're a lot bigger than I am. I'm going to say, bro, let's go, okay? People have been telling me to believe in you, and I'm finally believing in you, and you're letting me down. We can't do this. And then I'm going to take him out to a nice dinner, and then I'm never going to call him again. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, maybe that's not happening. Dawson Knox for Buffalo. I've told you for a while, I like Dawson Knox. I've always said that. Okay, I don't think you can find a video where I've had anything to say about Dawson Knox. And he's finally breaking through. Touchdowns in 3 straight games, including 2 touchdowns this past week. And for me, Dawson Knox is kind of taking over the Cole Beasley role. And I'm going to talk about that more here in just a second. But I like what they're doing with him right now, and I think it could keep up, and I really hope it does. Dalton Schultz for Dallas. I mean, he's got to be a weekly start now, right? I've kind of gone back and forth with Dalton Schultz. I have started him. I have sat him. I've had him inside my top 20. I've had him inside the top 12. I've had him outside the top 20. That's just this season alone. And whenever I'm low on him, you guys are like, bro, come on, you got it. I get it. He's played well. And I even told you a couple of weeks ago, if there's going to be a guy, it's going to be Dalton Schultz for me. That is who I would pick out of the tight ends for the Cowboys. I even said that this offseason, right? If we were talking about a target at the tight end position for the Cowboys, it was Dalton Schultz. But the use of Tony Pollard concerns me. They're trying to get back to running the football a lot more now. You still have Amari Cooper. You still have CeeDee Lamb. Michael Gallup's going to come back at some point. So for right now, yeah, we're going to continue to start Dalton Schultz. Just don't be surprised if he throws up just an absolute dud of a game, right? Tony Pollard was not targeted in the passing game this week. CeeDee Lamb had very limited targets in the passing game this week. So something's going to have to give, right? If we go to next week against the Giants and those 2 guys get more involved, who's it going to come from? Is it going to come from Amari Cooper? Is it going to come from not running the ball as much? Is it going to come from Dalton Schultz? So I just want you all to be wary, and that's why I've been wary with him so far, is because that's just what it. But Dak obviously likes him, and I'm hoping that it continues to keep up for Dalton Schultz at this point. Now let's move on to the streaming portion of the waiver wire video and talk about some potential streaming options, both at the quarterback position and for defensive special teams. Jameis Winston for New Orleans going up against Washington this week, who allows the most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks this year. And then Jacoby Brissett from Miami at 2.1% owned. Tampa Bay allows the 4th most fantasy points per game. And Brissett's actually done a pretty good job of taking care of the football, right? He's not making the huge passes, but he's making good passes. He's giving his playmakers time after the throw, things of that nature. So he's being a very, very good quarterback right now. Not a high-end quarterback, but if you need someone to fill in for some reason, you could do that. Kirk Cousins against Minnesota, barely below the 50% threshold for this video, going up against Detroit, probably owned in most leagues, but it's the Lions. You can run Kerr out there if you need to this week. Sam Darnold for Carolina. How is he only 18% owned? I don't get it. I don't understand how Sam Darnold is one of the top quarterbacks in the league, and he's 18% owned across multiple platforms right now. He just needs to be owned at this point, and you can start him. He leads the league in rushing touchdowns. I don't expect him to go out there and score 2 rushing touchdowns a game or even 1, but it's nice to know that they're utilizing him that way. Like, they're giving him that read option inside the 5 and kind of letting him have an idea of what he wants to do with it. They're giving him that freedom. Trey Lance for San Francisco, 23% owned. The only reason I'm including him here is because I knew 90% of you would probably ask, Kyle, what do you think about Trey Lance this week? I think it's his very first NFL start, and I think you're going to see some ups and downs. I love Trey Lance. Absolutely love him. He was my QB3 in this draft. I think he's got a ton of upside. I compared him to Patrick Mahomes. I love Trey Lance. But this is a guy that played 1 game, barely even, last season and then sat out. Okay? So he hasn't had a chance to fully play. Now, have they used him off and on? They have. Could he play well against Arizona? He could. But just remember what happened to Justin Fields a couple of weeks ago. Okay? Just remember that right there could be the same thing that happens to Trey Lance. Speaking of Arizona, I mean, they're listed here in the defensive special teams streaming options. But first, Carolina for going up against Philadelphia at 49% owned. Expect Carolina to make life very, very uncomfortable for Philadelphia and Jalen Hurts this coming week. Arizona, like I was just talking about, they were tough against the Rams this past week. Now they get rookie Trey Lance in his first start. Jimmy Garoppolo expected to miss a couple of weeks right now from what we've heard. Arizona could be a nice streaming option. And then again, Dallas. I mean, Dallas has just been playing so well right now. They're getting after the quarterback. Diggs has been absolutely amazing. Parson has been so good. Much improved defense. And now they get the New York Giants. Now, the final portion of my video is the players to drop section. But don't forget, these guys, it doesn't necessarily mean run out and drop them right this second. It's going to depend on your league, your scoring, what your roster looks like, what other people may need. It's going to depend on a lot of things. These are just names that are being talked about right now that we need to discuss whether or not they're going to be droppable soon. Myles Gaskin, this one hurts, is one of my must-own running backs this offseason. Again, as I mentioned, I have no idea why they've stopped using him. As of right now, can't find a reason for it. The only thing that I can think of is just he wasn't giving them the upside that they would have hoped. So now they're going to give Malcolm Brown a shot, and then maybe they go back to Gaskin in a couple of weeks. I'm not dropping Gaskin quite yet, but if you don't have a whole lot of room and you don't really have a lot of great running backs, you got to pick up Malcolm Brown for right now. Tyson Williams from Baltimore at 73% owned. It was fun, but he's done. And we tried to tell you all, right? A couple of weeks ago, we were like, we are really, really concerned. He missed some blitz packages. He was one of the causes for the fumble from Lamar Jackson against Las Vegas because he missed a blitz that he was supposed to pick up. He's not very good in pass protection. He's made some key mistakes, and he was a healthy scratch this week because of it. We tried to tell you that was a big concern for us and to be careful. We were met with some pushback with that. I told you when Latavius Murray signed that he was going to take over for Tyson Williams within a few weeks. In week 4, actually, it happened. So Tyson Williams is about done at this point. Sony Michel at 62% owned. Look, Henderson missed last week, and then he was questionable basically all week. I mean, not until today was he like, okay, yep, Henderson is going. This was still his backfield. He greatly outsnapped Sony Michel. He got way more touches than Sony Michel. He is the guy in the backfield. Ronald Jones from Tampa Bay, even Giovanni Bernard was not even active for Sunday Night Football, and Ronald Jones still couldn't get his butt onto the field. Robbie Anderson for Carolina, I mean, he's getting some targets, but he's not doing anything with them, right? Absolutely nothing. There's a lot of people out there right now. I don't want to go get receipts. That's not who I am. I don't like to do that. But for those of you that absolutely blew me up in the comments saying that you would take Robbie Anderson several rounds later than DJ Moore and get better production, I expect y'all to come back and say, you knew what you were talking about, Swag, right? You want to come back and tell me when I'm wrong about something, come back and tell me when I'm right about something, okay? That's what we say here. Cole Beasley for Buffalo at 73% owned. I'm not dropping him right away, but like I said with Dawson Knox, I think Knox is starting to take a lot of his targets. Beasley had a good week 2 weeks ago. Not a great week this past week, but the emergence of Dawson Knox kind of in that intermediate range, some of those plays over the middle of the field that really used to be Cole Beasley's bread and butter, those are going to Knox now. Emmanuel Sanders has been really, really good. Stephon Diggs is still the man, right? So because of all that, Cole Beasley's value is plummeting right now for me. Rondell Moore at 54% owned. I mean, he's going to have some good games, but I think that huge game a couple of weeks ago had got everybody excited, and then it really hasn't happened since then. And with Hopkins kind of being nursing an injury the last couple of weeks, gets Jalen Ramsey this past week. Rondell Moore still doesn't really have that. He's going to have some big games. It's going to happen, but I don't think the season-long breakout is going to happen quite yet. I think we still see like a Tyler Lockett type trajectory for this guy, where first couple of seasons, it's like, yeah, I mean, it was good. Like he had some good moments, but he doesn't really start to become that legitimate option that we can throw out there on a weekly basis for a year or two. Robert Tonyan from Green Bay, did nothing this week, right? Absolutely nothing. I had concerns about him this offseason. A lot of you were like, Kyle, where's Big Bobby Tonyan? Like, what are you doing? You got to have him on here. I really tried to listen. I did. I promise you, I tried my best to listen. I tried my best to look at it and say, okay, what can you do? And I've got to go back to going with my gut. I let you all convince me of something that wasn't really there because I thought I was missing something, and I don't think I am. Robert Tonyan, for me, 3 out of 4 weeks have been bad weeks for him. At this point, I'm off the bandwagon. Jonnu Smith from New England, it's Hunter Henry in this offense now. Jonnu Smith just isn't doing anything. Only one target in the first half, and Hunter Henry was the guy in the first half as well. But again, I record this during halftime, so who knows? Maybe the second half would be a lot different. But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for the Waiver Wire show this week. Hit that like button for me if you're new here to the Fantasy Headliners. You got to hit the subscribe button and stick around. And as always, leave me a comment down below. Who is somebody that you need to get off the Waiver Wire this week? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to get out of here. Peace out. Stay safe. Stay healthy. And I will catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.